Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com. And it is Monday, it's September 20th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And finally, we may have capitulated here to the downside. So it's time that we're going to see a bounce here of some kind, I would expect. You can see we actually pushed through the brown channel. We closed well back above it. My guess is if it turns back up, it'll probably run along that close right there, just kind of like this did at one time. See how these kind of run across those closes in the end when they turn back up, and I'm guessing that's probably what this will look like. We could see a couple of inside bars here and some sideways action, and we could actually be rolling over here and starting a downtrend. Um, I'm not ready to say that yet. My guess is I would expect a bounce. We've sold off really hard, and you can clearly see the channel coming down the close outside. And now we got a new low, and we pushed well into oversold here. So my guess is we're going to rally here to some point within the next day or so, maybe during the overnight into tomorrow. We'll see. This is a really huge. This is a huge bar. So this is like a capitulation type day, is what it looks like to me. You can see as these other sell-offs, you get these huge bars down compared to what you'd previously been getting, and then suddenly look how it rallies real strongly. And even if we're going to go lower, it wouldn't surprise me for a really strong rally here anytime, back up at least to the midline. So we'll see what happens here. But as you go back, you can see anytime we had those little capitulations uh, where the selling just gets overdone, it rallies real strongly. And so that's kind of what I would expect here. Like I said, even if it's only for a day or so before we turn lower again, um, they'll work out of this oversold condition most likely. So that's how I see it on the daily anyway. But we clearly got well into oversold territory here. So I expect us to bounce. But let's go to the 2000 tick chart. Okay, here's what that chart looks like. There's clearly two measured legs. We had this first leg down, and then we had a correction here, and from there we had almost a perfect measured move down. So that would have been a great target once we started lower again. Um, Generally, you would expect this to start from the trend line, but this thing was really weak. And you can see here, we couldn't even rally. We just kind of went sideways to the trend line before we sold off again. And honestly, I don't know that you needed this tan two-tiered channel. It's valid, but clearly you should have been playing the tighter, these blue and yellow ones, and then what's inside of those. The only place this would have helped you is probably on this. You made the first swing, then you tested it, and you tested it again. You might have went short right there. It might have helped you with that. I made that one green anyway because I still think it's risky. And that's one thing you're going to see here. There's not a lot of entries, good entries on this chart. And people will probably say, well, that's such a strong sell-off. Why wouldn't you have more sell opportunities? It's just because it was so choppy. And then when it did take off, it took off so fast and furious that you didn't get any setups to enter it really. And you just can't chase these because as soon as you chase any of these, like right in here, and that's what happened in here. There were several posts on the forum. I got several emails, people wondering why what they thought were good entries failed on them, and it's because they're trying to get short in all this choppy stuff. And it's just not a good place to get short in most cases because it rallies when it reverses. It rallies fast and furious. What happens is you get weak traders that try to get in short, and then it bounces. And especially when you get near these support areas, like right across here, um, really right across here, there were a lot of failed entries in here. And what happens is people try to get short in here, and it fails. And when it does, it rockets up real quick, and those people all jump out, and it just pushes even quicker. And then suddenly it runs out of steam, and they're all gone, and then the bottom falls out. And you'll see that happen over and over. So I really don't think you needed this two-tiered, but it's there, so I wanted to show it to you. But let's back out. We'll go through the trades that are here. And like I said, there's not a lot of them. Really, this was almost sideways stuff right here. We had this correction, which is the center of the pattern, and then it was all downhill from there. If I moved that or not, did I move that? Because I thought it was, yep, I must have moved it somehow, pushing around on the chart. But you had some support across here. It took a little work to get through there, and then finally we get through here right here, but I still don't see a setup. And you also had two measured legs down to that point, so you might expect prices to rally out of there because you had your break of this channel, and this got you, well, you didn't quite get a new low until down in here. I was thinking this got us to a new low, but it doesn't quite get there. But if you look at the blue channel, you get an overshoot, a break, and a couple legs down to a new low. So you might expect a rally out of there. So that's why I marked that one long. But that's about, there's a couple other green longs in here, but I just think they're really, really risky. But there's just not a lot of trades today. So let's back out. We'll go through them. Won't take long. We'll wrap this day up. So there was one right here out of the gate. And normally I might not even like this trade, but you can see we're clearly in a downtrend. It's a big spike in channel and we're working down, and you don't have much of a target here because the only target you might have looked at, and we're well, is this one. And you can see we're well past that by now. You can see we bounced right out that one, but we're well past that one and we're continuing to try to push lower. So this thing just looks really bearish. The reason I like this one is just simply because you make this high and you get a double test, and that's such a bearish bar. You may not have been able to get in this trade. Let me zoom in a little closer. As you can see, it closes on its low, opens, and just keeps going. So I don't know if you'd have got in that trade or not. It's there to take a look at. You may not get anything but a scalp out of this, but this thing actually gives an overshoot of the channel, and that's clearly the correct channel. You can see that, and we get an overshoot, so you might expect a break here. So when this thing goes up here in this upper half and you get this second entry long off the EMA or midline, because once you push through, it almost always comes back and tests it, so it gets two legs down to a test. I like going long there just to look for it to come back to the trend line and maybe these highs. And it's a little risky, but with that overshoot and the way it's playing off that midline, the fact that it's a second entry, you might take that trade. It's still aggressive because you just got to be real careful trying to pick bottoms in this thing. So, but if you're seeing this properly, there's a good chance you're going to get another leg up on this. And you may only go back to the trend line or back to these highs, but there's plenty of room to get out there. So you might take that trade. I don't recommend it, but you can see if you did, it turns out to be a great trade. And this thing rockets up. You get a close outside and new high. It's very tempting to go short right there. But this is where you wait on a lower high. People always ask me, what's a lower high? What's a higher low? When you're in a big downtrend and you get a nice correction like this, but yet you know prices are still going to probably attempt a retest of the lows, you don't just take don't take second entries, and don't, just because they're a second entry, let this trend channel play out. You get a close outside a new high, and then if you get a lower high with that much room back to the EMA, and all that lower high is doing is giving you further evidence that prices are starting to make lower highs and lower lows, because you have half of the pattern there, because now you got the high and you got a lower high. So if it goes lower, so now you got a lower high and a lower low. So you've got part of the pattern to prove it out, rather than just taking a shot in the dark that this is going to be the high. Now you know this is going to be high because you got a lower high here. And if that was right into the EMA, I probably wouldn't take it, but you got plenty of room back. So I like that trade, especially in this strong downtrend. And you can see if you catch that one trade, that may be all you need for the day. And of course it bounces down here. Draw your trend line just to see what happens. And it's clear that this yellow channel is in play. Again, I don't see any longs I like here. You do make a lower high here, but you haven't made a new high yet. So it's another one. that you might, and plus the other thing though is you got a one leg up and then this is your second leg, and we did have a measured leg, so and as far away as we are from the EMA, but that looks congestive because you got a bar in here with a tiny body. So you may or may not, I didn't mark that one, but it's another possible short. My problem with this one is you don't have a new high yet. So we run down and we end up with this playing out. You get your break, two legs to a new low, and then it reverses again. I don't think you want to try to get long in here either because it's just kind of working sideways. And there is a higher low here, but we've moved a good bit, and there's all that resistance right across there. So I don't like going long there. Again, it gaps over and takes off. It trapped a bunch of shorts here, most likely. So I don't know if you could get in that trade anyway. And then finally you get a break and a new high. You try to go higher once, twice, and look how bearish that bar is. That's also a second entry short. Now that's a pretty good setup. I like that one. We pushed through the EMA too. The hope is it would go all the way down here, but it doesn't. It still bounces. And so you still got a little bit of this yellow trend is working higher. But the big picture is still a downward bias. So as you see, most of your trades are still shorts. But I like that one. They come back and test it once, twice, and you get another bearish bar and another second entry short. And you are making lower highs and lower lows here. So not by much on the lower highs, but you're definitely making lower lows. So I like going short again. And again, it doesn't take off to the downside still. There was a little bit of an overshoot, so it could just keep going, which it does. But don't think they didn't attempt to, once you got this closeout, to make a new high, but the market wouldn't have anything to do with it. Sellers weren't anyway. So that's a triple test with a big bearish bar on a second entry short. You get another second entry here because this does make a new low and then first entry, second entry, but that's a little congestive. So that one scares me a little bit. You get a lower high, but now you're into the trend line. It drops on down and now you rally back up, but I don't see any. There is a second entry short right there, but this little channel's in play. Draw these things because they will help you. And I don't see any way to get in that one really safely. And then you finally make a lower high here, but it's too congestive. You could look at that as a failure, but you got to go short right into a bunch of support here. But when it pushes through and pulls back, and you can clearly see there's kind of a 3 attempts to go higher. Technically, this is not a new high by the counts, not on this chart, but you can see we tried to push up a couple of times. So the fact that we tried to go higher 3 times right there, you may take that trade. It's a little aggressive, but I mean, you got to take what you can get today. And you would be looking for a measured leg down, and you can see we still got a ways to go here. We don't end up reaching it till way over here once we get the break and a new low in place. So, but we do get this overshoot right here. And then you try to go higher or lower once, and you push up, and you try to go lower twice. It actually goes higher here, but it looks congestive. But then you get a second entry right off that key entry point in the EMA and a nice bullish bar. So there's still room back to the highs. Again, I think normally I would say this trade is not one you'd want to look at, but because of that overshoot, there's a good chance they're going to trap some people here. And you've got enough room back here to scalp out easily. And it runs straight up there and then turns down. And of course, now you got your first break of this little channel. So just be real careful on any more shorts. And you run up here. And you do make a failure here, but everything's still above the EMA, and that looks a little congestive. It's another one you could argue for that, hey, it may be worth taking it here because we do have a break and a new high on this correction, and we would be looking for a new low. But I honestly think you need a better setup than that. I wouldn't take that trade, I don't think. It's just it's a possibility, but I definitely don't want to take anything down here. And then, of course, you get another 2-legged correction, and it breaks higher. You get a second entry short, and that's the first break of this blue channel. So you would expect prices to make a new low. So that's the better entry, especially when it breaks higher and turns down. It probably traps traders there. Um, it looks like two leg. Technically, by the count, it's a first entry, second entry, third entry, but you can clearly see there's two legs back there. So you may take that trade. And notice we don't get any lower high. That's kind of how the whole day played out. They run a few traps, and then the bottom just falls out. And so you had to be really diligent and careful on these entries because it was too easy to get trapped. They did it over and over all day. It looks like we're going lower, and they run it up, and then everybody gets long, and then they let the bottom fall out again. And a lot of times that's how they will work it through these strong support areas. They can't get it through there, and so they'll let it run back up and trap a bunch of people, and eventually they all give up, and boom, you see what happens. But here, you've had a break and two legs to a new low, so now you might be expecting a possible reversal. And we know we're in way oversold territory here, even though we ended up going much lower. So when this shoots right up through the EMA with no resistance hardly at all, tries to go lower once, twice, that's a failure. That's probably with plenty of room back to these highs across here, so that's probably worth taking. And of course, that's where it runs out of steam back at the highs. And once again, you might have gone short here. This is not, it's close enough that you probably could say, hey, that's a double top, and you try to go higher once, twice. And that's so bullish, it's probably going to, and it does confirm that trend line. So you may take that short, and you can see it trap people, and look at it go, boom. That is a huge bar. 25 ticks in that bar. Definitely you don't want to go short way down here, but because it's a trap, you could use that go short right there. And then you can get in with only 12 ticks of a bar, which would take 14 ticks, which is still a big bar, but it's nothing like this bar right here. And there is a new high, and so you could say, hey, you could argue, hey, there's a failed second entry long right there, but you're not back to the EMA. You had some support here. It may trap you, and you can see the congestion. It's just not worth taking. It does keep going lower, but I don't see anything in there I like. All the way down, I see nothing. So, and you got a half-hearted setup here. So even though that's a huge move down, you just don't get a good opportunity to enter it. It's you know, it's frustrating. But what it'll do is it'll suck you into entering down here somewhere on a second entry. And I'm pretty sure at least one person asked about this, and look how sideways that is. It's just congestion. But I guarantee you, it suckers people in here, or they finally get a second entry short, and they go short right there only to get trapped, and then it goes right where they thought it was going to go. And that's what they do to you. It just, you know, if you see that congestion, anytime you see three or more bars stacked side by side, and at least one of them has a small body or no body like these two right here, don't enter. Because, I mean, because this is what happens. That's just, all that is a small trading range. So what happens when prices break out of a trading range? They fail. So this failed to the short side, then broke out the long side and failed, and failed back with the trend and went lower. And that's what they do. They trap you out here, run it up here, and everybody jumps back in thinking, oh, we finally got a bottom, and they sucker them in, and then that trap is set, and boom, and look how it rockets down real fast. It's because they got all those longs trapped. And all these people trying to pick bottoms realize, oops, I'm wrong, I'm too early. Don't try to pick bottoms. I see it over and over, and that's probably our biggest rule. If you're going to try to pick a bottom, at least make sure it's a reversal pattern. Like right here, you got a new low, and you try to go short once, you push through the EMA, you try to go short twice, it fails. This is still questionable, and I don't think you want to be looking for a reversal yet, but if you did, you would have at least got a scalp out of that. So if you follow the rules, it helps. So, and then, and you can see we're clearly working sideways here, but it finally drops through, comes back, you get a little breakout pullback, but there's no setup there, and off to the races, it's gone. And you get an overshoot. And so this is when you might look for a reversal. This one didn't shoot through the EMA and come back, but it closes above it. Notice you got a new low, first entry, second entry. And this looks like a great place to probably trap some shorts when it turned back up and looked that bullish. You might take it back to the EMA, and since you got an overshoot, we're probably going to get a break. And sure enough, it does. It runs all the way back up. I'm not crazy about either one of these longs. And then you get a second entry here, and that looks a little congestive too. But you get a little pull, it starts breaking out of the trend line, and people start selling down here. So you probably got people trapped, and you can see when it breaks higher, it rockets up again. Because all the shorts are seeing now, hey, we're in an uptrend. I got to get out until something changes, and they all exit. And you get that you get the close outside just like you got the overshoot here. Anytime you see that overshoot, if you're looking at your channel right, it's probably going to lead to a break soon thereafter. And there it is right there, right across here. And you've got a double test here, but your signal bar is not very good. And then you make a lower high right here with a big bearish signal bar after pushing through. That's a better place to get short. It's right off the trend line key entry point. Even that takes a minute, but once it starts going, that's probably the trade of the afternoon. You could ride this all the way down to the other side, or at least until it bounces. And again, you're just getting too far. You don't want to enter in that. And this looks congestive with a first entry, not a very good setup. So and then we drop on down here. Finally get a break of this little blue channel. And you get a second entry here, but again, it's too bullish, and it traps. It turns out to be a little trap, but notice it doesn't go very far. And then this is kind of a special one here. I marked this green, but I don't know that I would take it. But look, you've got your little correction. You got two legs down and a close outside, and then you run up and you make a new high. And you try to go higher once, and you turn back down, and it makes a new low, and then it tries to go higher a second time. So you could look at that as a failed second entry long. And it was looking very bullish at one time. So when it breaks lower right there, you probably got some longs trapped, and it's probably going to be good for a trap, which it is. And then it bounces. Draw these little micro channels because they help you. Wait till you get a break and a new high, and then finally you tried to go. You made a high. You got to close outside new high, and you try to go higher once, twice, and if it turns lower there, they're probably going to have them trapped again. And even though that looks a little sideways, you don't have the little body, the bar with the tiny body or no body. So there's a lot of overlap there, but it's not really congestion. You're still making lower highs and lower lows all the way down through there. And boom, it drops on down. You get another second entry here, but it's just too close to those lows. Yeah, it works, but I don't see risking that. And of course, it doesn't go very far. And you're not quite a measured move here, but with all that support, you just can't risk it. But of course, it runs down to that big measured move. Those two legs down, and that's the bottom. And we're way oversold at this point. And it just rockets out of there. And unfortunately, it doesn't give you a reversal pattern. It just takes off. And I don't see any entries in here I trust. And then you get, and it's like a spike in channel really. And it just keeps going here. This was the first one I saw. Technically, this is a double bottom, so you could look at that as a new low, and you try to go lower once, twice, so there's a failed second entry short. You could also call that a second entry long, but I think you're a little hard pressed for that. But just the fact that it tried to go lower, there's top pickers here, and you can see it traps some shorts because rockets right up real quick, and then once they run out, it falls right back down, and then it confirms that trend line, but you don't get another setup there. And it just keeps going higher, but again, I don't see any setups. It's getting late in the day, and then it runs into 2 o'clock, and like usual, it doesn't do much after 2 o'clock. So that's what I saw. It's 25 minutes worth, but there's not a lot of entries in there, and there's a lot of traps in there. Even though this was a very strong downtrend day, this was a tough day to trade. So If you struggled, it's just one of those days. You got to wait, and the key is to be very patient and wait on these few good setups that you see in here. And if you can do that, you're going to be fine. But they're few and far between. Uh, like I said, you would get trapped in and out multiple times before it would take off lower. And then when it would take off lower, it wouldn't give you a setup most cases. It just starts rocketing lower again. And it's just one of those days. So hopefully today was a capitulation day, meaning um, all the selling, you finally ran out the last of the longs that were trying to get long, and people have all gotten short, and there's not a lot of new shorts going to come in. All the longs have run out, and when that happens, this is the kind of rallies you get. And we could see a day that rallies strong just like that in the next day or so, maybe tomorrow, maybe during the overnight. So just be prepared for that, because that's what happens a lot of times. If we go back to this daily chart and you look back over time, that's exactly what's happened. Every time you get that final sell-off, and it's that big bar, and then we rally real strongly right after it. Boom, boom. And I would expect that's probably what we're going to see here. Nothing's written in stone, so don't automatically buy and say Mac told me I should have bought. But if this follows the general pattern, we're probably going to go higher from here. Even if it's only temporary, we might just get one day of it, and we might try to retest these lows again. But usually when you get that oversold in a bull market like this, we're going to run up again. So we'll have to see. I mean, I guarantee you the last few times it got down here and got down here and got down here and got down here, people were thinking the rally's over, the rally's over. And only for it to go much, much higher. So who knows where we're going now? I'm not saying we're going higher. Don't take that away from this. But my guess is we're going to see a rally here any day. And it may just be for one day, or it might just keep rallying straight up. We will have to see. So for now, we've been in oversold territory. We're still in oversold territory. So doesn't mean we can't push on down a few more times and start this thing really turning down before we rally and then start a downtrend though either. So, but within the next day or two, if it doesn't happen tomorrow, we're going to probably see a strong rally, even if it's only temporary. So that's my thoughts anyway. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. We'll see what tomorrow brings. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.